What if one night turned the entire narrative of war upside down? As darkness descended upon a Russian city, the reality of conflict struck home, raising haunting questions. Is anywhere truly safe when war knocks on your door? In a stunning twist of fate, the complacency of the Kremlin's propaganda unraveled, creating chaos in a city unprepared for the devastation that followed. For nearly 4 years, the war was a distant specter, a mere spectacle for the Russian people, as the Kremlin's grand propaganda machine lulled them into a false sense of security. But in the early hours of September 28, 2025, that illusion shattered. A brutal airstrike orchestrated by Russia unleashed hell upon Ukraine. But here's the shocking twist: the aftermath rippled back into Russia's own heart. These were not scenes from Kiev, but from Belgorod, a city of 500,000 now drowning in darkness, panic erupting in the streets. With no electricity, no water, and the defense systems rendered impotent, people were left vulnerable, gripped by fear. As Russian drones and missiles rained down on Ukraine, targeting civilian infrastructure with chilling precision, 140 million Russians were jolted awake, not by the rough hands of accountability, but by the brutal cold reality of conflict hitting home. No longer could they dismiss the darkness surrounding their Ukrainian neighbors. The sirens were silent in Belgorod, leaving the population blind to the threat that loomed. At that moment, the image of a stable, secure state began to fade. What sparked this night of reckoning? A calculated assault designed to subjugate Ukrainian resolve triggered not just outrage but unexpected retaliation. In the hours that followed, Ukraine launched an unprecedented counterattack, firing over 300 drones, striking deep into Russian territory. The heart of Belgorod's military logistics lay exposed as Ukrainian missiles targeted their critical power plants, igniting infernos that engulfed the region. Every flicker of light extinguished was a blow to Russian morale, transforming a seemingly routine operation into strategic chaos. Belgorod, once a hub of military might, now found itself powerless, cut off from reinforcements, its very infrastructure collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. With panic spreading like wildfire, local channels erupted with fear-inducing updates, fuel shortages, empty shelves, and confusion reigned supreme. The once confident facade of the Kremlin crumbled beneath the roar of impending doom, as even the governor acknowledged the glaring failures of state defense against incoming attacks. In the shadows, an invisible war raged, one fought not merely in the skies above Ukraine, but within the very psyche of the Russian populace. The attack didn't just involve missiles and drones, it unleashed doubts about their leadership. Would the regime protect them? Or had they unwittingly become chess pieces in a game of grand deception? As the air grew thick with smoke and tension, one question echoed: could history's painful lessons stir a revolution within? The intense rivalry was not just on the battlefield anymore, it seeped into the very homes of everyday Russians. This was a wake-up call. The power struggle no longer belonged solely to politicians and military leaders, it reverberated in the hearts and minds of the people. But what happens next? Can Ukraine capitalize on the moment? Or will the Kremlin's machinery of propaganda regroup, albeit weakened? As whispers of resistance and resilience echoed through the streets, a new chapter in a decades-old saga began to unfold. The battle was only just beginning, and for many, the stakes had never been higher. Would they choose to remain silent, or would the lights of change flicker back to life? In a shocking display of aggression, Russia launched an unprecedented barrage against Ukraine, deploying 595 drones and 48 missiles over just 12 hours. Targeting civilian infrastructure instead of military installations, this assault marked a sinister strategy that defied all humanitarian norms. The drone warfare was an assault not only on buildings, but on the very fabric of everyday life. Moments later, the world bore witness to chaos and suffering, captured in shaky phone footage from beleaguered Ukrainian cities. The devastation was not limited to military bases, power plants, hospitals, and even the vicinity of the Polish embassy in the heart of Kiev faced the onslaught. Missiles rained down on vital civilian locations, including a cardiology institute and a bread production facility, violating international laws and the principles of human dignity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky underscored the severity of the situation, stating that cities like Kiev, Zaporizhia, and Odessa were among those subjected to this ruthless attack. In a stunningly audacious move, Russia believed it could shatter Ukrainian resilience by plunging them into darkness and despair, hoping to force capitulation. Yet this cruelty overlooked a crucial reality: Ukraine had transformed. No longer merely absorbing blows, it was ready to strike back with unrelenting force. Within hours, the Ukrainian armed forces launched a remarkable counteroffensive, targeting 8 Russian regions with over 300 unmanned aerial vehicles and precision-guided munitions. Even the Russian Ministry of Defense inadvertently validated the scale of Ukraine's response, reporting the interception of 230 drones and numerous missiles. Central to this retaliation was Belgorod, where Ukrainian missiles struck a critical thermal power plant, igniting flames that consumed the night sky and sent the region into chaos. This was more than an assault, it was a deliberate act that collapsed the very infrastructure of Belgorod. The loss of power was catastrophic, rendering the city paralyzed, as hospitals became unresponsive and households were plunged into pitch darkness. Streets turned silent, punctuated only by the distant cries of the worried and the sirens of abandoned ambulances. Hours later, as videos streamed through social media, images of the catastrophe emerged. The vibrant lights that once marked the heart of Belgorod were snuffed out, transporting its residents back in time, making them live the stark reality of a bygone era. In the aftermath, Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov took to social media with a statement that unfurled fear across the region, warning of malfunctions in missile alert systems. As Belgorod shrouded itself in darkness, the true ramifications of the power outages revealed themselves. The city's infrastructure was in ruins. Water ceased to flow, heating systems failed, lights turned to shadows, and communication lines severed. Panic set in, a stark reminder that this invasion reached far beyond Ukrainian borders, echoing within Russian territory itself. Belgorod was not just any city, it served as a critical military command hub, operated by the Russian army. The strike had crippled their command capabilities. As the essential power sources flickered out, Russian troops found themselves in utter disarray. Maintaining order became a precarious endeavor, and chaos reigned supreme, leaving logistics and communication paralyzed. As civilians lamented their loss of security, military operations began to unravel. Vital supplies destined for the front lines remained stranded, and maintenance of critical machinery came to a halt. Ukraine's calculated strike had pulled the strings of systemic failure within Russia's war effort, unraveling the illusion of power and control the Kremlin wished to project. What started as a calculated assault on civilian targets had instigated a striking turnaround. Ukraine not only defended its territory but asserted its strength by dismantling the Russian narrative of invulnerability. This fierce retaliation shifted the paradigm of warfare, for in the chaos left behind, something far more significant was at stake. Faith in the Russian state's ability to protect its people was now shattered. In a dramatic shift of power dynamics, the narrative was rewritten, leaving the questions hanging. Was this the beginning of the end for a regime that believed itself invincible? Could the dawn of a new chapter in warfare be emerging? As uncertainty loomed, one truth remained clear: the war had left an indelible mark on both nations, redefining their futures in unforeseen ways. In the previous segment, we explored how the Ukrainian forces struck at the heart of the Belgorod Oblast, targeting a crucial thermal power plant. This attack didn't just cause a power outage, it symbolized a deeper failure of the Russian state to protect its citizens, sparking widespread panic among the population. What happens when the lights go out in a city of 500,000 souls? The night descended in Belgorod with an eerie silence, broken only by the crackle of flames illuminating the darkness. The power grid collapsed, streetlights flickered out, and the comforting hum of life ceased abruptly. In the blink of an eye, modern civilization regressed a century. Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov's voice trembled on a shaky video, announcing widespread power outages. His words, laced with urgency, warned the public to remain indoors. What unfolded next resembled a dystopian nightmare. Water pumps failed, leaving large swaths of the city parched. Elevators became traps, heating systems went cold. The once bustling thoroughfares morphed into parking lots as traffic signals blinked out. Communication lines snapped. Families were cut off, and panic spread like wildfire over social media, where heart-wrenching videos of the chaos surfaced. ATMs stood frozen, denying access to cash, stores could only barter with physical currency. The city, which had thrived on the conveniences of modern life, ground to a halt. Yet, as the atmosphere thickened with tension, the most alarming revelation came to light. The governor warned of malfunctions in the missile warning systems. Yes. The sirens that should have been a beacon of safety were silent. When the next wave of missiles struck, what would happen to countless lives left unprotected? This wasn't a mere technical failure, it was a haunting admission of a failing state. As fear festered in every corner, one question lingered: with defenses compromised and hope dimming, could Russia's heartland withstand the wrath of a retaliatory strike? The silence grew heavier, a grim harbinger of the chaos yet to unfold. In a terrifying turn of events, the entire Russian city of Belgorod plunged into chaos, revealing vulnerabilities once deemed unthinkable. Amidst the nerve-wracking darkness, residents faced a haunting dilemma. What happens when the very systems designed to protect a nation fail utterly? With no power, and crucial sirens rendered useless, panic reigned supreme as the people braced for another round of potential threats. This breakdown was not merely a technical hiccup, it signaled a critical failure in the state's most fundamental duty, protecting its citizens. The chaos unfolded in real time as local channels erupted with alarm, spilling panic into the streets. Lines stretched for miles at gas stations as desperate families fought over dwindling supplies of fuel for generators. Supermarkets turned into battlegrounds for basic necessities, revealing the fragility of human instincts in a crisis. The governor's warnings about staying indoors only added fuel to the hysteria. Was the Kremlin's image of an invulnerable state crumbling before their eyes? But this turmoil was merely the surface. Beneath the chaos lay a far more sinister reality. Belgorod was not just a civilian hub, it served as a pivotal military nerve center for Russia's operations in eastern Ukraine. The devastating strike on the thermal power plants severed the city's capacity to function, leaving military bases and command centers completely vulnerable. These facilities, accustomed to being the lifeline of military strategy, now found themselves blind and deaf to threats. Though generators existed, they were inadequate, needing constant refueling and often compromising the secrecy of their locations. More alarming was Russia's dire fuel crisis, which restricted its capacity to rely on these temporary solutions. That fateful night, the Russian command was rendered impotent, communication lines were severed, and the logistical artery that carried troops, ammunition, and supplies to the front lines was abruptly halted. Trains laden with essential resources sat idle, leaving soldiers and operations stranded at a crucial moment. As darkness enveloped Belgorod, the implications echoed far beyond tactical failure. The incident revealed how the psychological grip over the Russian populace was cracking, challenging the very fabric of the state's power. Would this be the moment history recognizes as the turning point in the war's narrative? As Ukrainians retaliated, they did more than respond, they ignited a revolution of resilience that reverberated across borders. The Russian chain of command in Belgorod was crippled, left blind and deaf in the darkness. The logistical artery, a key railway hub, ground to a halt, trapping supplies headed for the front. Supplies vanished into the void of uncertainty. Did you know Russia's fuel crisis made their generators a laughably temporary fix? Silent hums giving away positions, sparks of fear under low moonlit skies. Imagine the shriek of iron wheels on frozen tracks, the acrid scent of diesel fumes stagnating in the air. Trains, bulging with shells and soldiers, sat motionless for hours, even days. Supplies to the troops evaporated like mist over forgotten fields. But the horror deepened. Repair bays, humming with the buzz of welding torches and the grind of heavy cranes, fell silent too. Without power's relentless pulse, tanks and vehicles rusted into useless heaps, their metal skins growing cold and untouched. This wasn't mere retaliation. Ukraine's HIMARS missiles shattered more than concrete, they obliterated Russia's false shield of trust. What worth millions crumbled into dust. Panic's bitter taste lingered on tongues. Governor Vladislav Gladkov's stammered warnings amplified the dread. Sirens? Silent ghosts. No warnings for incoming threats. People huddled, hearts pounding, as warnings rippled through telegram threads like wildfire. President Volodymyr Zelensky vocalized the asymmetry. Russian strikes clung to Kiev and Odessa, focused, yet shallow. Ukraine's reach? Vast, forcing Moscow to scatter defenses across endless borders. Recall 643 drones and missiles launched by Russia, Ukraine deflected most. Shielding innocence. Yet their counterpunches pierced deep, Moscow shivered, St. Petersburg dimmed, Crimea trembled. Zelensky's harbinger of blackouts in Moscow became truth. Power outages in Moscow, he warned earlier, now a stark dawn. Uneasy question, could saluting puppets like Putin truly safeguard families when even his governors falter? Smart strikes dismantled brute force. Russia's attrition gamble, grinding down Ukraine's livelihood, recoiled viciously. Assumptions of invulnerability melted, but wait, the depths of this psychological quake were only beginning to fissure. What crippling blow would next shatter the facade? What happens when the predator becomes the prey? On a fateful night in September, the unthinkable unfolded in Russia, a blackout that plunged a city into chaos and exposed the vulnerabilities of the once feared Kremlin. Over 140 million stunned Russians awakened from their hypnotic state, realizing that the oppressive grip of war could reach their own doorstep. For nearly 4 years, the brutal conflict in Ukraine was a distant spectacle, sanitized by Kremlin propaganda. But as darkness enveloped Belgar, the Russian city that had long been shielded from the horrors of war, a new reality emerged. Images flooded social media, showcasing the devastation: no lights, no water, and a disconcerting silence where alarms should be. Panic swept through the streets, mimicking the very chaos Russia had unleashed on Ukraine. This unprecedented response came after a fierce onslaught from Russia, which included 595 drones and 48 missiles targeting Ukrainian cities. But instead of breaking the spirit of Ukraine, the attack ignited a storm of retaliation. Just hours after the assault, Ukraine unleashed a counterattack of over 300 drones and bombs, igniting a strategic chaos that left Belgar and its military paralyzed. The fiery scenes from that night documented more than just physical destruction, they revealed a fracture in the Kremlin's facade of control. The attack on the thermal power plant was a decisive blow. The collapse of the power grid was more than inconvenience, it symbolized Ukraine's strategic ingenuity. Suddenly, the very heart of Russian logistics came to a standstill. Trains loaded with ammunition were halted, cantankerous machines lay dormant, and chaos reigned as communication networks crumbled. Did the Kremlin ever foresee that a tactical strike on Ukrainian soil would lead to a defeat in their own backyard? As the governor of Belgar warned citizens of malfunctioning missile alarms, a sense of dread permeated the air. How could Putin, projecting strength for years, now admit to such vulnerability? The shift in power relationships was palpable. While Russia sought to drain Ukraine's strength through attrition, they found that their own infrastructure, aged and fragile, could be turned against them. Ukraine's tactical supremacy rendered Russian defenses ineffective, summarizing a war waged not just with missiles, but with cunning. September 28 will be remembered as the night when the narrative flipped. Russia, convinced of its immunity, discovered that the illusions of security can shatter in an instant. Amidst the chaos, one question lingers: can brute force truly suppress the unyielding spirit of a nation determined to reclaim its future? Amidst a relentless assault from Russia, the city of Belgorod faced an unexpected calamity on September 28, 2025. For over 12 hours, Russia unleashed chaos, targeting not military installations but civilian infrastructures. As bomb blasts echoed through the air, it became evident that this attack was a reckless gamble, a desperate attempt to shatter the resolve of Ukraine. But what happened next took everyone, including Russia, by surprise. Imagine, if you will, a nation conditioned by their leaders' propaganda, lulled into a false sense of security by the Kremlin's narrative of control. Suddenly, this illusion shattered. The nightfall over Belgorod brought not safety, but a harrowing blackout. What was once a robust city of 500,000 became eerily reminiscent of a bygone era, plunged into darkness, as sirens failed to alert the populace of the impending danger. Was this just the start of a much more profound realization among the Russian populace that their homes were not exempt from the horrors of war? The attack was meant to inflict fear, to bind the Ukrainian spirit, but within hours, Ukraine retaliated fiercely. Armed with advanced systems like the Patriot and bolstered by Western support, they struck back with purpose. Kiev's defense forces launched an unprecedented barrage, utilizing over 300 drones and precision munitions. The remnants of a vulnerable Russian military infrastructure, built largely upon outdated Soviet technology, could hardly withstand this modern onslaught. The result? A devastating blow to Belgorod's power supply and a crippling blow to Russian morale. Imagine the shock on the faces of civilians, once complacent, now trapped in their homes, facing palpable panic. Power outages paralyzed daily life, traffic lights failed, communications went dark, and basic services halted. In the echo of chaos, Governor Vladislav Gladkov's voice trembled as he warned of the potential for malfunctioning defense systems. How could they respond to another attack if the alarms were silent? What does this mean for a populace that believed they were secure? Panic spread, and with it doubt: could the state really protect them? The fallout of this unplanned reprisal was a far greater adversary than physical damage. The loss of trust in the Russian government, the realization that their leaders had overreached, began to ripple through society. Families could no longer reach one another, ATMs spat out refusals, and grocery shelves emptied. This was not merely bad luck, it was the beginning of a profound existential crisis within Russia. Soldiers on the front lines wondered, what's the worth of this fight when even home is a battlefield? As chaos brews in Belgorod, will the Russians rise in support of their beleaguered troops, or will they begin to question the very foundations of this conflict? Will this darkness spark a light of rebellion? The twisted irony lay in Ukraine's remarkable ability to flip the narrative. A nation once defined by its defensive stand was now rewriting the rules, delivering a blow that resonated far beyond the battlefield. In this game of attrition, who truly stands victorious? With every passing moment, the balance tips. Revealing a critical truth, Rasputin's tales of invincibility were but shadows, and as the lights flickered out in Belgorod, flickers of discontent ignited within the hearts of the Russian people. War, it seems, does not abide by borders or narratives, it transforms them into the very fabric of reality itself. The devastating strike on Belgar left Russian soldiers questioning their purpose in the conflict, eroding morale and sparking fears of wider desertion across the front lines. Can you imagine the bitter chill as sirens fail, leaving millions unprotected? What if this darkness wasn't just a one-off warning, but the start of something far more catastrophic? As soldiers face their own cities under fire, they start grappling with the brutal truth: what are they really dying for? The harsh reality could shatter the army's will, leading to more refusals to fight and a crumbling fighting force. This twist in the war might just be the beginning of Russia's unraveling. Ukrainian President Zelensky delivered a chilling warning after the counterattack, his voice steady like steel against the wind. "This is our measured reply," he declared, his tone carrying the weight of unspoken fury. If the onslaught persists, Moscow itself will plunge into blackouts. Hear the echoes of destruction, we freeze your people in the cold grip of fear. The inky void that swallowed Belgar that night felt like a suffocating cloak, thick with the acrid smell of smoke and distant explosions rattling through the bones. It whispered a terrifying prophecy for the Kremlin, a grim foreshadowing of powerlessness. As the city's lights flickered out, the question echoed relentlessly: which Russian heartland will darken next? Touch the icy panic in Leningrad? Picture the grinding halt of daily life, elevators trapping citizens in cold steel cages, the sour stench of panic filling the air as crowds storm supermarkets for dwindling supplies. Feel the numbness seeping in, as ATMs fail and cash reigns supreme in a world unplugged. This chaos isn't theoretical, it's Russia's worst nightmare unraveling on home soil. Whose safety net tears next, St. Petersburg's gleaming spires or Moscow's iron grip? As the pitch-black prophecy looms, a shocking twist emerges. Zelensky's vow isn't empty. Rumors swirl that Ukraine's precision strikes have already infiltrated deeper, targeting Russia's command hubs undetected. Could this be the war's ultimate reversal, where the aggressor's own shadows betray them? The darkness hints at betrayal within, perhaps insiders leaking coordinates, turning the Kremlin's strategy into ashes. What if Belgar's blackout was just a prelude? Imagine the Kremlin's elite shivering in mansions without power, their illusions of invincibility crumbling. The sensory assault grows, sirens blaring false alarms, the deafening silence when they die, smells of burning fuel as generators sputter. Victims clutch their phones in vain, screens black as the night, voices lost in the void. In a final, unthinkable turn, whispers emerge: Ukraine's next move could mirror history, stripping Russia bare as their own empire once did. Could Moscow's lights dim forever, forcing Putin to face his failures in the raw? The war's escalation feels personal now, a mirror held to tyranny, with every burned-out bulb reflecting shattered deceit. Which city topples next, do you think? Share your take below, we need your voices in this unfolding drama. Stay tuned for more insights, and enable alerts to catch every update. Thanks for joining the journey.